the idea of a vaccine and waiting for a vaccine for, the 12 to 18, 24 months, however long it will take to address the situation is a false narrative. It is absolutely not the only option we have in responding to this virus.
Alrighty, Casey Adams here. What's going on, everyone? I'm here with Dr. Shafiq Zaib, and we are here to talk a lot about what's happening regarding the coronavirus. So, that being said, thank you so much for having this conversation with me today.
Thank you, Casey. Yes, I've been appalled at the amount of information overload there has been in the world, whether it's by mainstream media or by all the communities of doctors that I communicate with. So I wanted to kind of share some information that may be uplifting and optimistic, because that is what the data is actually showing us at this time.
Yeah. Before we dive into it, I'd love for you to give, the people watching some insight into what you specialize in so that they can kind of have some, some credibility behind what you're about to say.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So I did my bachelor's of science in biochemistry. I worked in probably 10 different pharmacies. I was a certified nurse A2, and then I worked for Medicare D, healthcare insurance company, CVS Caremark. I saw how healthcare worked on multiple angles of the spectrum. And then I also saw how it didn't work in multiple ways too, especially in areas of chronic disease, etc. So then I went to medical school and I specialized in naturopathic medicine. And I had to learn about Eastern medicine and conventional medicine and how they can be used integratively and holistically, and I got to see the pure miracles that it worked on a lot of patients, and I got to see how it actually worked. And then I became an entrepreneur. I created startups for doctors to be able to grow their businesses and things of that nature, and a lot of data-driven decisions made in my life at this point. So with this whole pandemic happening, I've just dove deep into it, trying to find the truth and the facts behind the matter, because there was just so much panic, happening right now, unfortunately.
Totally. Where do you believe the misinformation is coming from? Because I know you have a lot of facts that you want to cover today, but how are you looking at the current situation of what's happening?
Well, it did start out, of course, in Wuhan, and the numbers, it's pretty difficult. So the Imperial College, they came out with a paper, right? And they projected 40 million deaths globally or more. And they came up with different models of how we could probably lessen that number. And it's difficult because the prediction factors that go into these models are really hard to determine. It's, how contagious is it? How much transmission is there from close contact versus, surfaces or brief interactions? What transmission is there from people who are asymptomatic? How strongly will governments respond, the socio-political, impact of that, the widespread use of face masks, how will that create a difference? And then, what difference will the lockdown create? How long is the lockdown? And what is the chances of reinfection and research? So there's a lot of different factors involved in predicting. It's difficult to do. So that's where a lot of the misinformation comes from, because there is a desire to have answers right now, and that's fine. It's helpful to be informed, but the prediction factors involved in having those answers are so difficult to obtain and understand with limited data. So that's where it's really coming from.
Totally. How do you think the U.S. has handled the situation as of now?
I think it's been handled well. It's the United States.
Yeah.
That alone saying it in itself. A lot of people don't understand the goal of the lockdown was to kind of delay the inevitable, and to hopefully delay it enough so that we could lessen the impact on the healthcare system, to not overwhelm the healthcare system, especially as fragile as it is today.
Totally.
But we have limited data, but a growing body of evidence showing that the numbers that went into the Imperial College paper that gave this doomsday prediction were completely off. off the mark astronomically. We have now we understand. So the infection fatality rate that went into those models, it was 0.9%, and then out of Wuhan there's a 3.4%. We're seeing now that it's as low as 0.1%, which is a huge difference. Whether it's the Santa Clara study that came out, whether we're looking at the asymptomatic people in Massachusetts, the amount of people infected there, Diamond cruise ship, and then we're looking at just like the European countries and how they play a role, and unfortunately we haven't even been talking about this, the nosocomial infection rates. That's the hospital personnel that have been infected, which in Italy was about 10% of the deaths, and that takes into account that they were some of the most elderly workforce as well. So it's this type of information that needs to be shared for the American citizens. Like here, I live here in Singapore. Right? And the way we've handled it is pretty remarkable. I have felt really proud of this country. The Prime Minister has been giving us information and I'm feeling empowered in the decisions, and a lot of people aren't scared here, and that fear in itself lowers the immune system.
Totally.
Ironically enough, that it's horrible, and I really wanted to kind of talk into how this fear is playing a role, especially in the United States. There's a lot of talk of like how we're creating this architecture for a totalitarianism. I can't say the word. Type of society. And what do I mean by that, right? What is this fear doing? Because it goes further than just this virus and the deaths. Like now we're with the growing body of evidence, looking at how the lockdown itself may be worse, more of a detriment than the virus itself. Again, reacting in the most cautious way was probably the best idea. But at this time, is it still the best idea? With 25 million people, filing for unemployment, we know that statistically, for every 1% of unemployment, there is an increase by 1% of suicides. Are we taking that into account? Are we taking the domestic violence increase into account? Are we taking any of these things? And what do we do with this fear? What is the government doing? And some can say this is perfectly valid, and some may, scratch their heads and be like, hey, I'm not so sure about this. Is this the new type of life I want to lead? Fear is playing a role in how we're reacting to what the government is saying is the correct response to this pandemic. And it's like the tracking of people's movements at all time because coronavirus. It's totally the suspension of freedom of assembly because coronavirus. It's the military policing of civilians because coronavirus. It's the banning of cash because coronavirus. Detention indefinite at this point, quarantine because coronavirus. There is a compulsory vaccination or other medical interventions potentially because coronavirus. Like at what point does this do we say I'm not so sure, this is what I want for my life or my family or my society, and where is the freedom of choice in this? But when you put this fear mongering into society, then it becomes a lot more difficult.
I'm curious, what are your predictions on how long this will last?
Again, it goes into those prediction factors, right? What I do know is that there is a growing body of evidence also coming out of Asia and South Korea that there is some people there, a reinfection taking place. But the people who are more likely to be asymptomatic or have absolutely mild symptoms. There is that as well. How long it will take in America, this is going to happen in waves. What we do know is that it may likely not overwhelm the healthcare system that we initially anticipated. And we still don't know how the virus works. We still keep having new situations. And so let's have a little science tutorial about the virus. Okay, so it starts off in the oral cavity, correct? Then it transmits to the lungs, and it goes to the alveoli, which are the little lung sacs. Okay, this is where oxygen transfer takes place with the capillaries around the lung sac. So that's the blood vessels. This is where the oxygen transfer happens, and then when the virus, when we become infected by SARS-CoV-2, it disrupts this oxygen transfer, and then our immune system has a reaction to it. And this is where you may hear cytokine storm as like some of the buzzwords that are out there, which is just an overreaction by our immune system, and it starts attacking our healthy cells. And then this creates fluid buildup, and we have the symptoms of fever and coughing, and then there's the slow and rapid respirations that we have. And a breakdown and eventually organ failure. Okay, so this is like the basis of it. The initial recommendations we had were to not provide anti-inflammatories, were to utilize ventilators, and then we're seeing that may actually be hurting the person's situation. So in terms of where it's going and how, we're still trying to understand to what extent this even affects the body, and why there's such a rapid decline in oxygen saturation in the person. And ventilators are not the answer, because they're more for people whose lung functionality has to some degree been jeopardized, but that's not, they're still able to breathe.
No, it's interesting, right? I have two more quick questions, and one being just, why is connection so important during a time like this?
Oh goodness. So connection's really important because that is the basis of health for a lot of people, especially at this time what this pandemic has done, unprecedented, is we've taken the human out of the hamster wheel. We've just been going, either living for the weekend. Every day is the weekend now for some people. And we've created this situation, and some people find it incredible, and some, it's horrible for it because of the lack of resources or safety and security in their lives. So there's, opposite extremes here involved, and I really want to acknowledge that. But we're in a place in society where we're being forced to reflect. We're being forced to some degree or another, improve our self-awareness, meaning what are we doing? How did we get here? What is my purpose in life? Am I really channeling into the power that I have within me? Which we don't. I feel so many people don't understand the infinite amount of love and compassion and power that we have as individuals inside of us. And an example of that is what happens when individual wills are in coherence in society. Look at the world today. Look at the amount of compassion that has taken place, the desire to connect even more so overwhelmingly, to understand how important that was. And the whole idea of how this plays a role in health is in itself massive. I mean, there's so many landmark studies done on this, more so than genetic factors, more so than even lifestyle, nutritional statuses of a person. Their social factors involved in the amount of connection and community a person has plays a huge role in a person's life.
Love that. Love that. I think just last question to wrap up this conversation, and that is, based on your research and what you've been studying, what is the most important thing that someone should know right now moving forward?
Yes. Okay. The most important thing a person should know moving forward in this situation is that they have options. That the idea of a vaccine and waiting for a vaccine for, the 12 to 18, 24 months, however long it will take to address the situation, is a false narrative. It is absolutely not the only option we have in responding to this virus. We have so many options in being able to strengthen our immune system. Casey, an incredible fact that is not widespread, unfortunately. Do you know, a guess, do you know how many viruses we host in our body?
I do not.
Just even a guess? Even
I
again.
guess, like, I want on a daily basis?
Yes.
50.
That's amazing feedback for me. We have over 300 trillion viruses in our body.
Got it.
No one knows that, and that's the issue, because we have this idea that it's like this random thing in the world that like sometimes pops up and destroys our lives. That's the kind of the narrative. No, we are literally built to house these. You know how many bacteria we have? It's around 80 trillion. We have more viruses than bacteria in our body. This is information that we are not told and empowered with. So there's this doctor and a group of doctors that have created this almost 40-page document on the other options there are, especially at this time, and it involves the supplements, the diet you can have, also the prescription medications that can play a role in them, and it describes the mechanism of actions and how they play a role in a virus like this, and it gives you links to the studies, and this is information that people should have. And if anyone wants this document, I am more than happy to spread this publicly. It's at you can. I was gonna say,
where's the best place that I can go to check that out?
It's literally, you can go to mbc.care and you can just put in your email, and then I can send you this information. And this is a document that's made for you to be able to go take to your provider. It's very in-depth and created by doctors themselves, and it's just, the person who does this usually sells these type of documents, but of course at this time no one with that type of information wants to make it inaccessible in any way. So I highly recommend it, and I look at these and I look at all the information out there on the antivirals and the way it works, and it's just the amount of suppressed information in the world right now. Just to give you an example, all the doctors that are writing material on vitamin C, their posts are being removed for illustrating the effects of and positive effects of vitamin C and vitamin D, which has been shown in so many studies to bolster the immune system. What is going on, right? What is going on? So that is really just truly the main message I want to send out to the public, is that you are absolutely empowered still at this time to protect yourself, to strengthen yourself, to be prepared for something like a virus that is causing such issues.
Totally. I love that. Well, that being said, just to wrap up, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know we've been trying to schedule this for quite some time now, so I just want to say I appreciate your time, and thank you so much for spreading this positive message today.
Thank you so much for having me and doing this with me as well.